Hello, and welcome to Arizona Laughs and Listings, the podcast where fun and funny folks get together and talk about real estate and comedy, two completely unrelated topics that go surprisingly well together. I'm your host, Kristen Levanway, a real estate agent here in the Phoenix metro area for 19 years, as well as a local stand-up comedian. My very first guest on this very first podcast is the very funny and very handy Mr. Mike Bolland. I'm so excited to have you here and have you start my journey with me is Mike Bolland. Mike is a good friend I've known for I don't know how many years we've known each other.
Few years.
Yeah, probably more than we realize. And he's a comedian friend, but we also are in Toastmasters together. And he has a wonderful nonprofit that I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about.
Oh, I'd love to talk about that. Thank you for having me on, by the way. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Absolutely.
So I was born without a hand. I was born without my right hand. And as I was growing up, I really have to give it up to my parents and the great things that they did for me, because my story isn't one of, boy, woe is me, I have one hand. My story is actually like, yeah, let's go. I got one hand. I like it. I mean, that's just my story. That's why I get up on stage and make fun of myself, or I make fun of two-handed people, probably more than I should, but that is what it is. And that's all because of my parents. So what I did, and they've unfortunately passed, but what I did was start a nonprofit going on 2 years ago now, called the Joe Marie Bolland Helping Hands. And what we try to do is help people in the limb loss and limb difference community adjust to life. Not everyone was born like me. Some it's accidents, sometimes it's medical. And a lot of times there's issues beyond the prosthetic that need to be addressed. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be a resource for many things, for mental health, for maybe job placement, but certainly for prosthetics too. And we're putting people together as well that maybe are like each other. I've met other people that are born without a right hand or without a hand just like me. And it's interesting the conversations you can get into. Some of these things you have shared experiences, sometimes you don't. But getting those people together and having conversations is very cathartic for people. And we're here to help in any way we can. Joe Marie Bolland's helpinghands.org is the website. And matter of fact, you did something for me with that organization. You were on the very first Comedy for Prosthetics comedy show we had.
That's right.
And
Back at JP's.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for doing that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that was a fun show.
It was.
That just goes to show you. That's the thing about comedy is, people think of it only as Netflix specials, but the level that we're at, which is not Netflix, at least not yet, and maybe not ever, I don't know. But there's a lot you can do in your communities, just as far as helping organizations, working with businesses, and of course, networking with some really interesting, creative people.
Yes.
I think the comedy community is a lot of fun. There's some really cool people that I've met that I would never have met in any other capacity. So I love it.
Yeah, I do too. I agree with you.
So I'm going to try my little banner thing here. Let's see. Okay, this is I should have put that on first.
Oh, nice.
It is our first podcast. And I'm clunking through this one, but
doing great.
We're going to talk about our first, well, not my first, your first. So how did you get started in comedy?
That goes back to 2016. Actually, I'll even go back even further. It's one of those bucket list items I think most of us that have actually done it have had for many years. And that's my story. I wanted to do this probably when I was in my 20s. And lo and behold, not until my 50s did I try it. But the reason why I waited so long is because life didn't hit me in the face like it did in 2016 when I went through a cancer battle. And going through that cancer battle, it was one of those things that you realize life isn't guaranteed. And hey, I think we all know that. We all say that. We all, to a certain extent, live it. But when it's really something that hits you in the face, well, then I think you start to take action. And that's what I did. I wish I wouldn't waited so long. So anyone that's listening, don't make my mistake. Start as soon as you can. But after the cancer scare, coming out through the other side, I wanted to try comedy. So I knew a common friend, Laura Wheeler. She worked at the same organization I was working at. And I approached her about giving it a shot. And she's not only a great comedian, she's a great writer and a great coach. I mean, I can say so many things about Laura. And she invited me to a class back in the old Comedy Spot back in the day in Scottsdale. I even remember walking up to the comedy spot, and one of the first people I saw was Gavin Bloom, by the way,
Oh, Gavin
oh,
Bloom. Yeah.
another fantastic comedian. You were talking about the great people you can meet in comedy. He's another one, But I also remember how scared I was just to even go to the comedy class. I was petrified. I didn't even know how to, but I just remember walking in and I was scared, you know what. But I'll
Right.
tell you what, it's been one of the funnest things, as you said, because of the people you meet and because of the challenge. And I think it's a challenge every time you get up there, right? I'm scared every time I get up,
Oh, yeah.
regardless how cool I look, because I don't even know if I look cool, but even if I look confident, I'm probably inside going, uh-oh, what's going to happen here? But when you
That's so
get,
funny that you say that because everybody says it. Everybody's terrified. And I mean, you don't look it when you're performing. And people have said that to me as well. But
yeah,
inside, we're dying and we're like,
yeah.
why did I do this? Why am I doing this?
What,
What am I crazy? I
what
could be
bucket
home
did I
right
want to
now.
fill? I mean,
Slippers.
exactly.
Yeah.
Why? But, you
But
know,
then afterwards, it's
Oh,
great.
there's two feelings that I get out of it. There's no better feeling when you're up there and you make people laugh. I don't think there's a better feeling. And then when you get off and you reflect on what you've accomplished, even if it doesn't matter at what level. At that point, it doesn't matter whether it's a Netflix special or it's a open mic. You should get off that stage and feel proud of yourself for taking the chance and getting up there because it will make you feel good.
Oh, exactly. And then you just can't wait to do again. Go work on your bits, get them, it's polish them up, and
Yes.
they need a new idea. You're like all excited to work on it.
Yes.
So yeah, it's a whole process.
There's nothing better than getting that goofy little idea while you're driving down the road, of course, where you
Yeah.
can't, write it down. I
Try to
actually have,
write it while you're not crashing your car.
well, that's you two-handed people because you can text and
That's
drive. Me, I mean, here's what I do. I have an MP3 player a recorder that I actually will record on. I know you
Yeah,
can do it on the phone, but it's hard for me to control my phone. So I just got to,
I gotcha. But if you
yeah,
don't record it at that moment, try and remember later, forget it. You never will.
gone,
It's
gone.
gone. It's
Yes.
gone.
Yep. I agree.
All right. What about your first house?
My first house was in 1994. We bought it, my wife and I. Actually, I would say that it closed either December 30th of 1994 and we moved in January 1st. I can't remember exactly the date, but I can tell you exactly the house too. It was on the corner of Cooper and Elliott. There's only one house on the corner of Cooper and Elliott. It's on the southwest corner of Cooper and Elliott. And it was great. I mean, especially at the time, you're talking about, mid 90s, there was nothing on that corner. Now it's,
Right.
a pretty big, pretty big corner, but we moved out of that. We lived there for 7 years, but it was nothing better than having that house. And we had both of our kids there, Sabrina and Brianna, my wife Trish, and it was a great house for us. And I really, look back and think to those times, and sometimes just like everyone else, like owning your first car, which I happen to still own my very first car. Sometimes I
That's
look back to
awesome.
that. Sometimes you look back and go, "Gosh, that was a great house. We should have never
Right?
gotten rid of it. Maybe I should have rented it." But it is what it is.
It is, yeah. How did it feel though? Do you think that it was an easy process to buy that first house?
It wasn't easy for me for a variety of reasons. I had never gone through the process before, so my wife and I were. I don't know if things have changed. You're the expert here, but boy, the amount of papers we had to initial and sign and read and sign and read. I mean, with one hand, my hand's cramping up. I'm like, okay, just yeah,
It's like
give
double
me
the
an
work.
ink pad and I'll just do a stump print on it. I mean, that's kind of the way I was thinking. But we went through it, and for another reason, the where I was working at the time, I had to get off early from work, and for whatever reason, sometimes these things happen. My manager didn't want to let me off early, so we're talking like I got there about 15 minutes before I had to get there. My wife's already waiting for me, and then we had to
Oh,
blast through this paperwork. And because of where I worked at the time, I wasn't even clean. I was working in the stores,
oh yeah.
changing tires, and I won't say the company, but yeah, I was a mess. So, but it went through. So mine was a little different, maybe a little harder because more of the complexities of leaving my work. But uh, other
I
than
don't
that,
know.
it was fine.
It
Yeah.
sounds like something I've heard many times.
Yes.
Of course, now they do mobile notaries, so
Yeah.
that makes it easier. Sometimes they can just come to you, and that does help. Like
Yes.
back in 1994, they didn't have a lot of this electronic gizmo stuff we have now.
No, it was like Morse code, I believe.
Yeah, and
Or
you had to do
they had
everything in
fax
person.
machines. Yeah, they had
That's
fax
true.
machines.
You can
Yeah.
fax things,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Things
they
have
didn't.
come a long way since then.
And I don't know if you know this, but we actually do own a second house now, and it's kind of a
Oh,
we have a cabin, we call it a cabin. It's really a house up in Vernon, Arizona, which is close to Sholo. And the
mhm.
nice thing about this house is it's something that my wife's dad built, her mom and dad, but they all, the family before I was part of the picture, all got together and really kind of put their hands and into building it, and they built it themselves. And un
Wow.
it's really neat. It's a great place. We own, the plot that it's on plus 2 additional plots up there in Vernon, and, unfortunately, her dad passed away in 2000, and her mom spent some time up there for the next, few years, I'd say. And then after that, her mom decided that she didn't want to maintain the house any longer, so she offered it up to both my, wife's brother and sister, and they decided for whatever reason, it could have been financial, could have been they didn't want the added responsibilities of owning another house. But when my wife asked me, I said, "Yeah, well, let's get that, whatever it
Yeah,
takes." And it took a lot for us to get it at that time. We weren't as financially secure, but now we own it outright. And my girls have grown up there. We do a lot of quad riding. We do make s'mores and play
yeah, that's
games.
nice.
Really like it.
That's nice. Get out of the heat.
Yes, absolutely. I'll probably go up there. We're recording this in March. I'm probably going to go up there in a couple days just to make sure everything's good after the winter because I have to winterize and all that. But love it,
Yeah,
love it.
that's amazing. That's very cool. That's very lucky that you guys get to have that.
It was definitely luck. It was definitely luck. It wasn't skill, that's for sure.
Ah, skill's overrated, right?
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's like juggling. Well, I don't juggle, but anyway.
Well,
Oh my!
one-handed juggler, I don't know.
I could juggle like this, but when it gets to that, I'll practice.
All right. The next segment are your favorite rooms. So, what's your favorite room in either of your houses?
In the house I'm in right now, and I wouldn't have said this a year and a half ago, but it is the room I'm in right now. We have an older house built in the 70s, late 70s, and so it has a sunk-in front living room. One of those.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
one of those sunken. And we pretty much passed it by when we're entering the house and just look at it. Oh, there it is. I mean, in the background, I have some old radios and things like that, but it was more of a display purpose and never spent time in here.
Mm.
Now it's like my den. I put up some barn doors where I can close everything, and this is where I record my We're Not Stumped podcast.
Uh-huh.
And that's why it's so important to me. And I shouldn't even say probably, I spend more time in this room right now than any other room in the house, because if I'm not discussing or having a guest on my podcast, I'm editing the podcast or doing other business related things around other things I'm pursuing in my life. So right now, this is my favorite room, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, right now
Uh-huh.
this is my favorite room. And then
That's your
the house up north, it's just the family room, because it's 1,000 square feet. It's not a big house, but the kitchen and the family room are kind of one, they're all in one,
uh-huh.
and it's just fun because we'll play games in there and make breakfast in there, and it's just a great room.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure there's so many good memories just think about that trip and that trip. And
Oh,
that's interesting. You know, people think about having a big fancy house, but that doesn't sound like it's a big fancy house. It's
neither.
a
I
right?
would say neither one of them, neither one of our houses currently are. It's one of
Uh-huh.
those things that while I was working in my career, there was a decision that we could have made to get a bigger house. But, this is just everything is a personal decision, right? My wife and I made the decision of, hey, we moved one time with the girls. My youngest at the time she wasn't even 3 years old. But then my girls have grown up in this house, and yeah, they come. My youngest was over earlier today, and she took a nap. It's so comfortable for them here that we don't want to get away from this house. There's so many memories for them here that we're going to continue to stay here, and we're very much Yeah, there's always something to do though, right? Yesterday I put in a new reverse osmosis system.
Oh
And
yeah,
today I'll be putting in a new front faucet as well because these things happen. But
that's true.
yeah,
Especially if you have a house from the 70s.
absolutely. And we've done everything. I'll tell you what, we've torn this place up. I mean, we used to, what are they called? Was it a galley kitchen? The kind where, or like built like a horseshoe. I don't know if
Oh,
that's,
right, yeah.
yeah. Well, I tore that off and just made it, a much bigger room. And then we went to IKEA and put some new cabinets up, and just make it more of our own. And I enjoy doing that. Even though I have one hand, I'd like to think I'm handy, so
Are.
I know it's but I'll do. Again, I'm not licensed or anything like that, but I will do my own plumbing, which I really learned up north. I learned how to plumb, because if you have a busted pipe, especially 20 years ago in Vernon, I can't tell you how long it'd be to try to get somebody there to
Oh,
do it.
yeah.
Like, all right, well, let's sweat some pipes. And now, of course, with the pecks and things and the shark bites, and a little bit easier, but I'll still do whatever it takes to fix a house. So I love
Yeah.
doing it. I love home improvement, DIY.
It can be really satisfying. It can be frustrating too,
Yep.
but I think when you can get those projects done, and like you said, you make the house your own. And that's
Yes.
interesting when people are buying a home. I think sometimes you focus on things that years later you're not even going to think twice about because you've added things to the home, or it's just interesting what becomes important to you later on. I think it's an interesting aspect of real estate.
Well, I can relate to that because we helped my daughter get a townhouse or a condo. The townhouse is to the ground. Is that correct?
Yeah, townhouse. Usually they're 2-story, little
Yeah.
patio area.
Okay. That's exact. So in 2019, actually, before some of the pricing went crazy, and we went and looked at a bunch. I got to be honest, my wife and my daughter looked more than I did. But even when I was available, because I was working at the time, but even when I was available, I looked at quite a bit. But to me, and this is just me, when you look at a house, I think you have to look at beyond what, especially like a load bearing wall. Hey, if it's a load bearing, obviously there's not much you can do, especially on a DIY. Things can be done, but maybe not somebody like me. But if you could look beyond that, you could really see the possibilities. I mean, when we moved in, when she moved in, when she bought it, she had a very early to mid 80s kitchen, and white fixtures, and
Oh,
just
right.
the brown cabinets. It just, oh, and then a little porthole, or porthole's not the correct term, but she had like a breakfast bench or whatever that looked into the kitchen, but it seemed like there was only a foot of being
Oh,
able to look in.
did it have the cabinets that kinda hang
Yes,
down?
yes,
Yes,
yep.
yes. You
So
bump your head on it all the time?
tore those
Uh-huh.
out. I tore those
Yeah.
out, and I tore out part of the wall and expand. I mean, it's fun because if you could look at those things and go, well, okay, that's not insurmountable. Of course, you have to, a little blood, sweat, and tears, as they say, and a lot of sweat equity, but it's worth it. If you can
Oh,
do
yeah.
that, it's so worth it, and I love it. And immediately, we got that house for, let's say, about $10,000 less than the average was going on in that townhouse. But by the time we were done with, probably, well, let's say we put 10,000 in, and I'm sure if I looked it up, I could figure it out. But by the time we were done, and it was so modern, she already had $10,000 to $20,000 of equity in that house. So it was just one of those, and then she loved it. She's still there. So,
Right?
and it's
That's
hers. Like you
awesome.
said, it's hers.
Yeah, and it's her first house, and,
Yep.
unless she has a reason to move, she's got a place for however long,
Hmm.
which is what people need to think about is, in 2019, maybe the payment was a little bit of a stretch for her at that time. But if you look at rents back then compared to now, and her house payment, which is now the same,
Yes.
it's the long game
And
in
she
real
was
estate.
looking for an apartment. She was looking for two-bedroom apartments, to bring on a roommate. And I was
Mhm.
like, hey, I think it might be worth it looking for like a townhouse or a condo or whatever. And then,
Right.
she's very smart. She's got her master's. So when oh yeah, that makes sense. It was just
Yeah.
more my experience as a person, as opposed to her knowledge. And, she gets it. Same thing though. So she moved in, got her roommate, and the income from her roommate actually paid her mortgage. So
Oh, wow.
right there. And it was a good
So
deal
she's
for her
living for
roommate
free.
too. Yeah, and her roommate got a great deal too, because to your point, at the time, rent was and it's probably still crazy. So her
Yeah.
roommate couldn't have gotten a better deal, and obviously she couldn't have either. And they end up being they're great friends and went to college together. So she's since moved out. She's got a boyfriend, and they're living. So now she's alone. Now my daughter's alone,
Oh,
but all good.
yeah, it is good. It is good. All right. We're going to move on to the next segment, which I like to call the real estate rundown. So as I said before we started, talk to real estate agents all the time about this. There's tons of videos and everything about stats and whatever. And I think most people are bored by that. So I want to give you a couple of tidbits and also hear what you've been hearing and just kind of see what we make of it all. So the big thing right now that everybody's focused on is interest rates. So I watch a index called the Mortgage News Daily Index, and it has been hanging right around between, I'd say, 6.8 and 7.1 for months. It edged down last week. It's back up to 6.92. So when you get a mortgage loan, it might not be right there because a lot of it depends on your credit, your income, all kinds of factors. So your lender will give you the rate, but it's a way to compare where rates are. Everybody's waiting for rates to come down because then houses are more affordable. The FHA loan, which a lot of people use the FHA loan for their first home, is about 0.5% less. So if you got an FHA loan, you would probably pay less in interest. And then the VA loan, which if you've been in the military and you can get that VA loan, it's a zero down, really great way to get that first house for sure. Wow. And that interest rate usually is around what FHA is. It's the same right now, about 6.42. So I don't know if you've heard, what have you been hearing about interest rates?
I think I got to be honest. I think this segment that you've come up with is brilliant because I am not in the I'm not in the real estate game. I'm not looking for a house. The last house we bought, helped my daughter buy, was 4.5 years ago, 3.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. So you're going to get what I hear, which is just, like out in the ether. Who knows?
Right.
I heard that the rates were higher. I didn't know how high. It was just interesting listening to you. I wasn't sure how high they were. I did hear that they had gone up. But here's another thing that I've heard, and I can't, like I said, it's a great segment because this is just like word on the street. This is just me. Yeah. I also think that what I hear or what I'm feeling is that houses, they did peak and they may have come down a little bit, but maybe not as much as a lot of people thought they were. So they've kind of maybe stabilized to a certain extent. So but to your point earlier, and that this is the biggest question, if you can afford to get into a house, I'd always recommend getting into a house instead of waiting for these things to come down. It's like waiting for your presents at Christmas. You may not get exactly what you want. So, but you can't make in my opinion, you can't make a bad choice or bad decisions by moving forward and making an investment into you, your life, and your future by buying a house. That's just always the way I've always thought.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I think people are waiting and they're thinking that the house prices are going to come down. I've heard that. I've been hearing people say that since 2000, easily 13, 14. Yeah. The bottom of the market was 2011. And once they started going up a little bit, everyone's like, well, they're going to come down anytime now. And they're just not. There's nothing right now that's going to make home prices come down. They come up a little bit. I'd say the average is probably about 6%. Okay. Typically, depending on what area you're looking at and price range you're in. The average house is in Arizona, Phoenix area has probably gone up about 6% since last year. So you have to decide if you're waiting, if you could have bought a house last year, but you said, oh, I'll just wait. Well, I don't know. Was that a good move or not?
I don't know. I mean, you're the professional, but I would say it probably wasn't. And I always equate it to, you could look at anything and everyone looks at the bubble and gets infatuated by that. And it's the same thing if you're watching sports, you're watching Patrick Mahomes and go, well, everybody should be able to play quarterback like that. Well, no, that's not the way it goes. This is a special talent. And bubbles aren't always going to happen, but they're probably going to happen again. And where do you want to be? I mean, this could be early for the next bubble. You don't know. So to expect it to just go down, that's that'd be hedging the bets more than I would personally do. But again, I already own a couple houses, so that's just me. And I'm not looking to move.
Right. That's the nice thing is once you get settled in, unless you're selling your house, you don't really care. What the whole bubble concept. So I've seen this chart of home prices in the United States. There's this federal tracking system that looks at
Okay, then I
the
already don't
average home
believe it.
price.
I'm just joking. Go ahead.
It's what
If it's
it's what
federal, then I don't believe it. It's a joke.
it's I
I
know.
believe it.
But it tracks home prices from like the 70s till present. And it kind of looks like this. I don't know. Where's my hand? Okay, there it is. Here's my hand. So it kind of goes up and then it gets to that bubble part and it goes like this and it goes like this and then it goes like this. Once you average everything out, that was such an anomaly, that whole thing.
Yes. There's still a
Didn't even
trend line
happen
there,
again.
right? There's still a trend line, and the trend line is up.
Exactly.
There could be peaks and valleys, but it's up.
Exactly. Yeah. So you could wait, but I don't know if it's worth it or not. The other thing I think is interesting, I'm going to throw out to you because I think we're both in the same boat. I don't know about you, but I don't own $1 million house and I don't think I ever will. Well, if you live long enough, maybe your house will be worth $1 million.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But the luxury market is out of control. Like those houses are not only selling like crazy, but they're going up in price like crazy, which is so weird.
Yeah.
Once you have money, I guess.
I'll let you know if that ever happens.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm happy in my little normal middle class lifestyle, but there's one stat I saw that homes over $1 million or over $10 million, the month over month price went up 36.9%. Like,
wow.
That's just a crazy statistic.
Wow.
It's crazy. So I don't know. There's just a different world.
Yeah.
We don't live in.
No, I wouldn't even know where to begin on that one. Thank you for sharing that stat though. That's a very interesting statistic. I'll have to get new friends.
Maybe, or just get that Netflix special.
Yes.
Maybe then.
That's what we're working towards.
I don't know. Even if I had a Netflix special, I think I'd still want my little house. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's just
There's too many
nice.
memories here. I agree.
Yeah, it's true. It's what you put in the house that makes it special.
Mm-hmm.
So
I completely agree.
well, this was fun. What's my next segment here? Oh, it didn't work. Okay. There it goes. What's coming up for Mike Bolland?
I do have a show that well, first of all, next week, I'm going to be speaking at the Hanger Clinic. They have a amputee support group, limb loss support group, and they've asked me to speak on March 13th. So I'm really excited about that. I'm going to talk about the triple A's of limb loss. And these are things that I learned maybe from personal experience, but also from having the We're Not Stumped podcast. And I'll go over them real quick. It's the triple A's are alone, advocacy, and attitude. And basically, hey, you can feel like you're alone as any human can. And sometimes you feel like you're alone because you have limb loss, because I could walk into a Cardinals game and I'll be the only one there with one hand. But that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Same with self-advocacy. I personally don't wear a prosthetic, and I've never had to be my own advocate necessarily, maybe within the job market for being a limb loss and being an advocate. But I did through my cancer journey. I really had to be loud, and others in my life had to be loud when I wasn't able to be. And then attitude. I think attitude is just, hey, you know what? I have one hand. I like it. It doesn't mean everyone that is within the limb loss community is going to necessarily like their own journey or, like their own situation, but it's okay to like yourself, no matter how physically you are. So those are the three things I'm going to be talking about next week with the Hanger Clinic. I'm very honored to do that. And then in May, I'm going to have a show on May 11th. And actually, we're making the announcement here. I posted something to Facebook, but I haven't really I haven't talked to anybody about it, but it's a takeoff of the We're Not Stumped podcast called I'm Not Stumped. And what it is basically the talk that I've been giving, very fortunate to give to corporations and things like that, just about my life and about the great people that have been part of my life that I think give me the attitude that I'm able to have. And that starts with my mom and dad, without a doubt. currently, my wife, my kids, my brother, my sister, my great friends. There's so many people I know. And then I've been fortunate to do some interesting things. I played Danny in the Trial of Billy Jack back in the day. I was on the
Yeah.
Pro Bowlers tour. So it's just really one of those things that I bring everything together, and I hope the mission is to have people look a little differently at people like me, or maybe look within themselves and go, you know what, I'm okay. It doesn't matter if I'm a little bit different. I can still achieve things, and I can still look for that next bucket list item, and maybe even get on stage myself. So that is, like I said, it's going to be May 11th, a Saturday, May 11th. There's two shows, one at 2, one at 4. And tickets will soon be available on the Herberger Theatre website. It is not currently there yet because I'm still working on some of the technicalities and making sure that I get them everything they need, including artwork and things like that. But a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's at the Herberger?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's
Well, we'll
like
see.
our Radio City Music Hall or something. Like our Phoenix. I mean, that's a big time show.
Well, it's in the Studio West, which is their medium. They have something called the CAX Theater, which I think sits between 75 and 100. They have
Mhm.
Stage West, the one I'm going to be doing, which is about 250 to 300. And then they have like their grand ballroom. And I apologize to the Herberger Theater. I don't remember what their
Oh,
big theater is called, but that sits like 700 people. That's not the one
yeah.
I'm in. I'm in the medium-sized one. Looking to get the word out however I can on that show, and I'm sure I'll be a bucket of nerves before that show, but I'm really looking forward to it, and
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
excited.
excited for you. I've seen your evolution of that
You have.
presentation, and
Yes.
I think like it's very entertaining for sure. And it's surprising at some of the adventures you've had in your life, I think.
Well, what's
But
interesting. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
it is a good lesson to just like we were saying at the beginning, don't wait to do things that you want to do. You
Yes.
just go out and do it and see what happens.
Well, isn't that part of your story as well? You had to get up on stage the first time.
Oh yeah, we all did. Yeah. I
Where
come
was?
at it from the because I have an engineering degree, so my joke is always, well, it's not rocket science. I say that about everything. It's not rocket science. So
What a great
that's
degree.
that's my justification.
That's a great degree. Congratulations.
Yeah, and that's why I sell real estate now. That's a long story in itself, but that's awesome. Do you have any comedy shows coming up?
I don't have any coming up, and the reason why is because I'm putting so much effort towards this show that I'm making sure that I'm practicing everything. Although I will say that I'll give it away. Probably the first 7 to 10 minutes of the show is my comedy.
Oh
It's
yeah,
it's about my looking at my life as a one-handed person, maybe looking at two-handed people in a funny way. Hopefully, they won't get offended. I mean, we'll see how they think. So I am doing that. I am practicing that. Maybe I'll even show up on a Thursday night and try that first
yeah.
7 minutes,
Come
because
to
we
the
got to.
mic.
Yes, the Thursday night mic that Kristen is so
Yes,
great at emceeing, and actually
at
Saturday every other
Jarrod's Coffee
at
Tea
Jarrod's.
Gallery, our favorite little coffee shop in
Oh, that
downtown Mesa.
place is great. Hey,
They're
even
awesome.
if you don't want to get on stage, it's always a great show, whether it's a Saturday or a Thursday, and they have a lot of things going on. I know you know a lot more about Jarrod than I do, but I'll tell you what, you want a great cup of coffee, tea, and have a snack.
Yes.
That place is fantastic, and
And you
and
just
the
walk
owners.
away feeling good. You just always feel good when you leave there. You just
Absolutely,
do.
the owners are so welcoming. That place is fantastic. Hidden gem in Mesa.
It is. And it's a great mic. And if you ever want to start comedy, it's a great place to start. Come to
That
that
is
Saturday mic. Don't swear if you come on Saturday. Gotta keep it clean. But
that
yeah,
mic is perfect to start at. Actually, I wish that was available to me when I was starting. It's
yeah,
that good.
it really is. It's really good. Well, this was great. I mean, my first podcast. Woo. So
This is
I
great.
really appreciate it. And tell people really quick how they can watch your podcast. We're Not Stumped.
Yeah, the podcast URL is we'renotstumped.com. And basically, what it is, I interview other people in the limb loss community, but I also expand to family members, because there has to be a caregiver in some of these situations, plus people in the industry who make prosthetics. So there's quite a bit there, and it's available on all the major platforms, whether it be Apple or, Spotify, YouTube. It's on all of those platforms. Thank you for allowing me
Good
to
one.
plug that.
For sure, for sure. Well, that's it. Thank you so much. And we'll sign off. I need a good ending for my podcast. I'll think about what that's going to be. For right now, it's just going to be see you next time.
Well,
Thanks,
thank you for
Mike,
having
so
me
much
on.
for helping me out. I really appreciate
Thank you.
it. My thanks once again to Mike Bolland for joining me today on the podcast. It was great having you, Mike. Be sure to check out his nonprofit at joeandmariehelpinghands.org and his podcast at we'renotstumped.com. And until I see you again, go out and have some laughs. Buy a house. Man, I gotta work on that ending.